But every time I walk through here, I feel like I'm walking into a whole different world. Guten Gardening, everybody. Well, we finally got just about everything in ground, in container, etc. And so today, I want to take you on a tour of our Zone 5 garden. And I'm going to start in our front garden space. But I can't get to the front garden space without looking at some of these beautiful flowers out front here. I love this shade of orange. Looks like hunter's orange, don't you think? And this shade of yellow. All right, let's get to that front garden. This is our third year growing in a front garden space that's made up of 7 beds, and I'm only showing you 6 of those beds right now because our 7th is undergoing some change, and I'm not ready to show you that yet. In our first little bed here on the corner, we have okra growing, multiple varieties of okra, and we also have some peppers here at the very back. But our okra is finally taking off, and you can see surrounding that okra is a whole bunch of purslane, that edible plant that a lot of people consider to be like a weed. It's actually quite tasty. The thing is, it can really overtake an area if you don't want it there. It's been about 3 weeks from the time of planting before it finally started to grow the way we wanted it to, and there are 3 different types of okra in there. And right next to that bed, we have a whole bunch of pepper plants growing in here, some California Wonder and some poblano peppers. You can see the weeds are also taking their toll on this bed. Now, interestingly enough, there was one garden tool we had never invested in that I finally broke down and bought, and I'm actually going to put a link to it in the description because it is absolutely my favorite garden hoe. And that is this stirrup hoe. And for those of you who have never used a stirrup hoe before, it is a completely different experience, in my opinion, from using just your traditional type of garden hoe. And the reason is all this empty space here in the middle lets the dirt go through as you're cutting off the weeds. And you can go forward or you can come backward with it. But basically, and this soil is super wet right now, but basically this allows you to cut the weeds off and you don't have to worry about pulling a whole bunch of soil. Hard to do one-handed, I'll give it that. But you don't have to worry about pulling a whole bunch of soil into a pile, which is one of the things that I've dealt with, one of the challenges with the normal hoe. Now, I definitely recommend using this tool when it's not so muddy out, but we've had so much rain recently. But yeah, it makes it super easy to get in here, and it's a lot faster than just pulling weeds by hand. And as cathartic as I find pulling weeds to be, sometimes I just don't have enough time to get out here and pull every single one. So using a stirrup hoe or something like that to get out here, and it really makes a difference for us. Again, I'll put a link to one in the description if you're interested in getting something like this. Now, one of the things that we've talked about is making sure that we're growing food that we actually need. And so I've got a lot of broccoli and cauliflower growing in here because that's something that our family will definitely consume quite a bit of. And I focused more on that and cabbage and peppers and just things that we always need, that our family always needs. And so you're going to see a lot of those types of vegetables, actually a lot of brassicas today in our garden space. Our GreenStalk tower of blue and purple potatoes is coming along quite nicely. The only variety that didn't see every single potato come up was our Adirondack blue, but we got almost every potato there coming up. And so we've got our Huckleberry Gold, which is purple color on the outside, and then it's not inside, but a lot of these, like our Purple Viking here, purple on the outside. Our Purple Magic Molly, that's purple on the inside. So our Purple Magic Molly and our Adirondack Blue are both going to be that blue or purple color inside, whereas the other ones have that nice purple skin. All right, let's take a look at my older daughter's herb garden here in her pink GreenStalk. Now remember, all of this was planted from seed. Not everything has come up, but almost everything has done pretty nicely. Our cilantro here at the top, looking good the whole way around. We finally got some of our rosemary. This one takes a long time to germinate. Finally got some of our rosemary coming in. Here's some basil that's looking really nice. Our dill had no problem at all. I think our dill was the first plant to come up, first herb to come up. And then parsley right below this, looking really good. And here's our sage. Look at that. Sage started from seed outdoors. Now, the one tier that seems to have not produced anything so far is tarragon. I'm not exactly sure. I I don't think this is tarragon, but I'm not sure. So that's something we're gonna have to figure out. All right, the last thing I'm gonna show you in our front garden space are a couple of summer squash here. All of our winter squash are over at the community garden, but we did plant several summer squash, whether it's zucchini or patty pan, because those are quick and easy consumables that we really like as a family. Now, they don't store so well unless we freeze them, blanch them, something like that, or can them. But it's something that we do enjoy growing and our family likes the taste of. Now, initially I was planning to come out here and plant a bunch of beets in this GreenStalk, and I still am. Actually, right up beside our honeyberry bushes here, down in these pockets, I'm gonna plant a bunch of beets. But I had a whole bunch of kohlrabi and cabbage and broccoli as well. And so I decided to go ahead and plant those in here to see how they would turn out. I've not really tried growing any of those particular plants, and we'll see how they handle the size of those plants, how the GreenStalk handles the size of those plants. But that'll be interesting. Our beautiful red lettuce right up here. That'll be interesting to see. So again, a bunch of brassicas in here along with this beautiful red lettuce in this GreenStalk, and then I'm going to come through and plant some more beets right down in here in the empty tiers. There is a robin nest right on top of our beautiful grapes. Look at these grapes. I'm going to get you in here and show you what the actual grapes are looking like. But when I get close to here, these robins get so unhappy. I'm sorry, I'm not going to disturb anybody. This is one of my favorite crops. Absolutely love these grapes. Look at that bunch that's going to be here. And it's a little difficult to get through here. But on the underside, you can just see, there you go, you can see the grapes a little bit more clearly on the underside here. But every time I walk through here, I feel like I'm walking into a whole different world. Look at the grapes climbing our house. That's so cool. All right, right up beside our house, some more of our summer squash. And then our massive 32-foot long, 15 different varieties of potato bed is growing so nicely. Some of our potatoes are actually already flowering. And that means that these aren't so far away from harvest time, the ones that are flowering. And actually, quite a few of them are getting to a point now where they're going to flower. I think this rain has really been helping with the growth. You know, it's so interesting. We had a couple of days of super hot weather, and now we're back to multiple days of rain. The mosquitoes this year have to be some of the worst that we've dealt with. I'd like to hear from you what your experience is with mosquitoes this year. You know, we didn't have to deal with the cicadas. I actually like that sound if it's not too loud. Well, we didn't have to deal with cicadas this year, but we're definitely dealing with a massive number of mosquitoes. I've been bitten 5 or 6 or 8 times so far, and I've only been out here a couple of minutes. Look at all those grapes. They're coming right along, right up above our potatoes here. Man, there's so many grapes on here. This is going to be so good. You know, this variety of grape is my wife's favorite. And last year, right at the time of harvest, the birds came and took every single one of them. And so we didn't get a single one in. So we're going to be more careful with that this year. Hey, a random borage plant. Haven't planted borage now. It's probably been, what, 3 years since I planted borage? But they still find ways to reseed. Love that cucumber taste. It's so good. Check out our video on 3 plants that you don't need to buy again once you've planted them, and you'll learn more about borage. It's so nice. Our black currants are getting close to being ripe. You know, this black currant bush, I would say, is one that we don't take advantage of nearly as much as we probably should in terms of how we use this. The one plant that I really love here that we definitely take advantage of, certainly eating it right on the spot, are our gooseberries. These are another month or so away from being ready, I would say. For whatever reason, this spot right beside our house hasn't done so well in the past couple of years. So I threw a couple of tomatoes in here. We're not growing nearly as many tomatoes this year as we have in the past because we have quite a few tomatoes indoors already in terms of stuff in our freezer. So this needs a lot more hay. This is our Ruth Stout hay bed. We've got about 8 varieties of potatoes growing in here. Everything is looking great. Again, going to flower already, but I do need to come back through and add some more hay. I've been adding it throughout the season to try to keep on top of any of the potatoes that might pop up here. But that's looking really nice. All right, as we get to the back of our house, now we're in our main garden space right here. And then of course the garden that's growing right behind our house as well. And you can see the weeds. I actually weeded this about a week ago and the weeds just come in so quickly right here. So I got to get that stirrup hoe out here to take care of everything around our cauliflower that are growing in here, different cauliflower plants. And in our main garden space here, we have a whole bunch of kale. Kale is one of those plants that we just grow every single year. It preserves so easily. A lot of different ways to use kale, a lot of different varieties. And so we have a bunch of kale growing here. I'm thinking probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we should start harvesting off of here. A little bit of celery, 2 celery plants here. And then these are 3 volunteer tomatoes. And the volunteer tomatoes are the only 3 that we've kept. I've been pulling up volunteers left and right out here to try to keep them from overtaking our garden like they did last season. Now I'm noticing our pole beans here seem to be, some of them seem to be under attack. I'm gonna have to get in here and look and see what's attacking them. But these are finally starting to come through. And then in between each of these areas, I put a nice summer squash. But I didn't want to put too much here in the middle. I've made that mistake in the past, and then I can't get in and access the beans or whatever else we have growing here. So these beans are coming up a little bit sporadically at this point, but we'll keep an eye on them and make sure that they actually come through and germinate well. Now, cabbage became something that our family ate a lot more of this past season, so I wanted to make sure to get as many cabbage plants in here as possible. And for whatever reason, the red cabbage hasn't done as well for us in the past, but I still threw 3 or 4 of those in here, and I went ahead and added a bunch of our, well, a couple of different varieties of green cabbage in here. One variety being some megaton cabbage, which is supposed to produce pretty well. And then we get down here and we start to see a couple of the plants that I grow. Well, here's some celery. This is celery that's going to seed. This is the celery that survived last season. And I could go ahead and I could harvest these stalks. They'd be really delicious. Look how tall this plant is. But I want to see it go to seed. I want to collect some of these celery seeds. So this is our celery plant, and here are our cucumbers. The only cucumbers I planted this year, starting to get a few small cucumbers on them. And then right beside that, a whole bunch of early prolific straight neck squash. And you can see the little baby squash on here starting to come in. So here in the, I mean, these grow so quickly. So I would say here in about a week or so, we're gonna have a whole bunch of squash. Which is to say, here in about a week or so, I'm gonna be eating a bunch of fried squash as well. Okay, not the healthiest way to consume them, but a delicious way. Now behind that main garden space, we have our onions. Now this is the first year that I actually directly sowed onion seeds in this space. And one of the challenges that I found was that by the time they were, well, I just weeded this about a week and a half ago, but by the time they were big enough like this, the weeds were surrounding them. So I had to do a massive weeding, which is pretty challenging to do. But I want to see how well these perform in comparison to starting them indoors like we've done in years past. Now, I'm going to come down here and show you that our onions, there are a couple of them that came back from last season, and so they're going to seed. Actually, if I come down here and show you this one, you've got the flower starting to open up. See a couple of flowers there starting to open up? This is my favorite garden vegetable flower, I think. But it's not just our onions that are going to seed. If you take a look at our leeks that we overwintered out here, they're opening up as well. And look at how big the flowers are, and they haven't even fully opened up. You can see they're about to open up, probably another day or so. And it's so interesting to watch this process, because basically, well, here, we'll start here. It looks like an onion, doesn't it? The flower looks like an onion, and then it breaks open like this, and then this comes off the whole way. Now it comes off on its own, but I'm gonna take it off here just so you can see it. How cool is this? I can't wait for this to open up. I think I'm gonna do a short on the different allium flowers It's the same thing. There's a similar appearance, of course, to garlic as well. Now, I've talked a little bit about potatoes, but of course we have a whole bunch more potatoes and sweet potatoes growing out here, as those are two of our main crops. Our blue 50-gallon drums that we've grown potatoes in for the last, 4 seasons, we have gone back to purple. These are Magic Molly purple potatoes, which was the original potato we planted in here, our best harvest ever. And so I thought, hey, let's bring purple back. So we'll definitely do a video once we get to harvesting time. I love the color of these purple potatoes. I got 5 in each one of these, 5 that we harvested from last season growing in here. So we're gonna see how well they perform. And of course, our black buckets where we've grown sweet potatoes in for the last 4 years as well. These are starting to pick up and look nice. One thing I've noticed about these buckets is they're not all created equally. These I got from Walmart because I couldn't get any from Menards a couple years ago, and they're starting to crack a little bit, but for the cost and the number of years that we get out of them, number of years of use, I would say that these are worth the 10, 12 bucks to grow in. And we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 containers. Let's see if we can walk through here and see a few more of them. 8 or 9 different containers of sweet potatoes growing in here, just like so. Oh, those look beautiful, don't they? And we've got 6 or 7 different varieties of sweet potatoes, all sweet potatoes that we started. Actually, I can show you that too. All sweet potato varieties that we saved from last season, and then we started the slips from those. And so these are still growing and growing even after I've pulled a ton of slips off of them. Now, this 3x6 raised bed, we have a bunch of beets growing, but actually this is the early wonder fall top. We've multi-sown these beets, and you can see they're coming up nicely, but our Detroit dark reds did not come up as well. It's basically barren in here. We have a couple that came up, but it seems like there was something going on with those seeds. Our little queen are looking okay, but I obviously need to come in here and weed out a little bit as well. And right next door to that, you can see an image that you're probably familiar with seeing now, which is the area where we're growing our garlic, as we've been harvesting the scapes off of our garlic as they're ready. And then some volunteer red potatoes that are in here that we planted last season and didn't see when it came time to harvest. Those are ones that we saved from the store. So we've got some work to do here in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. Here's some more of our sweet potatoes in containers. Again, we usually plant 3 slips per container, and I directly pulled these off, didn't put them in water or anything, pulled these off of the sweet potato, planted them in here. Even with all that heat, they rooted, and they're looking really, really nice. Now, let's pull this out of here. Weed a little bit while I'm out here. Some more of our beets. Beets are another vegetable that we have taken to eating a lot more of as a family. And there are 2 small raised beds here. I think the only 2 that we ever purchased. It's just, they tend to be a pretty big waste of money, in my opinion, to buy them, just because, I mean, something like this, I think we got them on sale, but something like this doesn't have a lot of square footage at all, and you're probably going to spend 50, 60 bucks. Here, let me pull around to the side here so you can actually see it. You're going to spend 50 to 60 bucks on something like this. I would say do what we've done, spend that same money and build something like this. 18 square feet raised bed for about the same money. It's going to last just as long. And as always, we're growing in our compost bins. Now, I did put a whole bunch of quail waste that had been composting in these bins, and then I added a little bit of potting mix or a little bit of soil mix on top and planted a few things, a few stragglers in here. So we've got a nice little sweet Dakota rose watermelon, a couple of spaghetti squash that looked like they were going to die, I threw in here. And you'll notice something that's happening here is from right up above, we're getting close in terms of ripeness for our plums. And I think we should end up with a few really nice ones this year. Nice little GreenStalk full of sweet potato slips as well. One thing I did this season, because I noticed our bottom tier of our GreenStalk typically is the driest tier. I put some peppers down there. They're not that far along, but they're growing. I put some peppers on the bottom tier, and then loaded up the sweet potatoes through the rest of the tiers there. And then our 6x6 keyhole bed, it's about 32 square feet because we have that little cutout in there to make this accessible. There are the Sharpo Miras and the Baltic Rose potatoes growing in here, two of our favorite and best producing varieties. And then right in front of that, I've got 4 gray containers. These are a food safe plastic, and these 4 gray containers we have in these 3, you can see they're about the same stage, 3 different varieties of fingerling potatoes just to see how they compare to each other. And then I took some of the red potatoes that we had saved from last season, that we had saved from the store initially, and planted them in this 4th gray container to see how well they do, you know, the season after. So they're no longer store-bought. I guess you could say they're Guten Gardening potatoes. And we've made it basically the whole way around the house to our patio garden, our container garden. We've got some potatoes growing in containers here. This potato is the one that I just pulled the little sprout off of a couple of potatoes and planted in here. This will be the first harvest, I think. I think this container should be done first. But these have already flowered. Some dill that is flowering now. This is dill that we definitely didn't plant, that volunteered to come back. And then I decided to grow some sweet potatoes in some smaller containers. Now these are still pretty substantial containers, but I wanted to see what we could do with containers that could fit in a patio setting. So we'll have some patio sweet potato harvest soon. Some squash. I've got my 1 container of purslane where I let the purslane take over so we can eat right out of there. And then I'm trying to grow some brassicas as well. One of the things that we like to try to do here, and you can't see much, but these are some potatoes in here, is to see what all we can grow in a patio type of setting. This is a green scallop Bennings patty pan squash. It'll be really interesting, our first year growing that. But we like to see what we can grow in containers to encourage those of you with smaller spaces to grow as much as possible. Our Egyptian walking onions are really spreading out. I gotta do a full video on this because these are fascinating to me. Probably one of the most fascinating plants that I've got growing this year. And if you know this smell, you know how amazing it is, but you'll also probably understand why I've got it in a container and nowhere else. We've got peppers in our containers. There's some more of our sweet potatoes in containers as well. I would say probably, and I didn't do it for this particular video, but more than likely you want to have a bush variety of sweet potato if you're going to be growing them in containers. With our DIY vertical garden setup and our sweet potatoes, I only put the sweet potatoes in the top 2 tiers this time, not all the way down to the bottom. We'll see if that makes a difference. And as I look up top here, let's see if we see anything in here. Oh, yep, right there. You can see the beginnings. I've got some potatoes planted up top, and I've done that for all 3 of our DIY containers. Potatoes in the top, sweet potatoes in the bottom. A couple more cabbages. I grew some onions in containers this year. I have no idea how well they'll do. These, I just had some extra seeds left over, so I threw them in this particular container, and they seem to be pretty healthy right now. And then I had some extra garlic as well, and these garlic are ready to be harvested. Well, the scapes are ready to be harvested, certainly. And then a couple weeks after that, we'll get these out of here. So we've got a lot of the same varieties in these smaller containers that we have, that we're growing in our main garden space. We're trying to encourage you to try and experiment around as much as possible when it comes to what you can grow in those small spaces. And speaking of small space gardening, take a look at the beans, the green beans. These are all bush beans growing in our GreenStalk, or GreenStalk, our green bean GreenStalk. Yeah. And my quail are talking to me. I think they're hungry. All right, look at all the beans, the flowers, the future beans that are about to be growing in here. So many, all throughout this GreenStalk. I'll come around so you can see. I had to replant, oh, that's not a bean. I had to replant a couple of pockets. There we go. I had to replant a couple of pockets about 2 weeks ago because there were a couple that hadn't grown, hadn't germinated, or that the thunderstorm that we had that broke a couple of them, I had to come back and replant, but these are looking so nice. I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to the different varieties of beans that are growing in here. Well, I realized that I talked about my older daughter's pink GreenStalk, but I didn't talk about the stone GreenStalk that's behind me. That's my younger daughter's. And she had pretty eclectic tastes, and most everything has come up. There's some thinning that needs to be done. There are also a couple of plants that the critters got to, and so we have to replant probably with something else, but I'll show you that one now. Now she wanted bush beans up top, and actually you can see a tiny little one right here. So hers are somehow farther along than the beans that I grew. Actually, these are early contender green beans. So these are pretty quick growing green beans. So we've got the early contender bush beans. She wanted strawberries. So we've got 2 tiers of strawberries that I transplanted from strawberries that were growing just in our ground out here. And then she wanted celery and carrots. And you can see the carrots right here. Oh, well, she's apparently growing some purslane too. You can see the carrots certainly did better on this tier. The bottom tier got a little bit attacked, and you can see where some of these carrots were eaten up. Yeah, you can see the remains of something right here. But yeah, there were a couple of tiers that got attacked, and then our celery, I saw it come up and then I saw it disappear. So something really likes celery, so we have to replant that area. But really, it's like anything else in the garden. You're gonna have insects you're gonna have to deal with, you're gonna have pests, you're gonna have critters come along and take some of the food too. And there's a part of it that you live with, because I'm not willing to go out and spread any kind of pesticide or anything like that. You know, if it's something I can handle with something natural like DE, if it's something I can come out and just work over and deal with by hand, that's fine. But I'll deal with a little bit of loss here and there. Well, this is definitely the green phase of the year. I mean, everything is looking lush. That rain has been fantastic. Okay, the thunderstorms that we're expecting here in the next couple of hours are the reason I'm recording this video now, because we're gonna get some more rain. I'm not gonna complain. It may be a little bit much. I'm not gonna complain because, again, everything is growing nicely. We have some stuff we have to replant. We have some stuff that was late getting in the ground, but we're getting there. And that's the key to a successful garden. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this Zone 5 garden tour. You can see we don't have a massive property, but you know what we do have? We have a lot of vegetables growing here, and that's something that we hope you take some inspiration from and that you're interested in doing as well. Hey, if you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.